Alrighty, let's just make sure that the live is working. I'm so excited for today. It is so dreary here that these fun, bright florals are just going to cheer up the day for sure. And I hope they do for you as well. So here we are. I'm just showing, I was just warming up, having fun. Today we are going to be doing very whimsical loose florals and stems. So then this is part one of a two-part series tutorial that I'm teaching. Today we'll be doing just the watercolor focus, and then the next video that I'm releasing is how to turn these watercolor floral illustrations into a sticker design that is going to be printed through Sticker Mule. You could print it on any other adhesive paper that you have, but this one I want to show you is through Sticker Mule because they are my #1 sticker vendor. I absolutely love them. They are washable, they go through the dishwasher. So if you're looking to get into selling your artwork, stickers are a really awesome way to do that. People love buying stickers because they can just grab them as a small item, both online and at my markets that I sell at. So I can't wait to share with you the full tutorial series, but today we're just gonna have fun and relax and paint some whimsical florals and stems and leaves. And there's no particular way of painting these. I then will show you in the next video how we will scan them and digitize them and create them into, I want to do a heart, like a shape of a heart out of these florals that we paint today. And then inside we'll have a little brush lettering that says spread love. So I think it's going to be such a sweet sticker, and it'll be in a die cut shape. So the die cut will cut right around that ragged edge that we'll have from our flowers. So really, really cool. Can't wait to share with you guys. Stickers have been something that I have been selling for a while, and they definitely are #1 seller. Um, I think just I didn't know the sticker craze out there until just in the last year, so it's pretty it's pretty fun. But you can do such fun personalizations with stickers on water bottles and laptops, so I can see why people really do love them. I'm over here with my watercolor paint palette. It has I call this my nature palette. I absolutely love it. I don't get to use it enough because I'm usually painting dogs and pets that are browns and other dark colors. So this cheers me up today. And it's on a beautiful hand ceramic made paint palette. I spoiled myself and got one of these just because I think they're beautiful and fun. And I love the way that the water moves on this glazed pottery piece. So also another fun idea for a future gift for yourself or other fellow watercolor artists in your life. To begin, I am just going to use a relatively large brush. This would be in the 10 to 12 pointed round brush range. And I like it because it's going to give me some nice thick strokes as well as a nice pointed round tip to it. This is a very big brush for me. I normally work in a much smaller brush, but because these are loose and whimsical, I want to be able to have a lot of water on my brush, so a bigger brush it is. Of course, you'll need your water, a paper towel, and then your paints. So you're not having to follow along with my specific colors. I am doing this in the spirit of Valentine's Day. And so I'm going to work a lot in the pinks, oranges, yellows, but feel free to use whatever color palette you love best. So to begin, I'm just going to use a decent amount of water on my brush, but I don't want it to be pooling too much where I can't control it. So I'll just dab it on my paper towel. Let's start with a relatively pink, whimsical, like peony style of flower. So here I am with my pink paint. I'm just going to use exactly what I have from the tube here. And again, fair amount of paint and water on my brush. I'm going to start with the inner part of this flower and work my way out by just doing some fun little whimsical, loose spirals out from the center. The center is going to have yellow, and let's go ahead and pick up more water on our brush. Let's just start to form those petals as they work their way out. Again, have fun with this. You really can't mess it up because these will get scanned in and they are going to actually be scanned and printed smaller than we are painting them. Just leaving little bits of white between some of these petals and in the middle of them, just enough to show a petal-like um, object. And I kind of like that shape, totally whimsical. It's a fun change of pace for me because I work with such detail in portraits. Let's grab a little bit of yellow and orange. And while our flower is still wet, I'm just going to drop some of that in towards the center to give a little bit of a color mixing right on the paper. So again, here we are, a little bit of color mixing. It's going to dry a lot lighter and prettier. Right now it just looks really wet and soupy, but let's just give it some time to dry. And the inside of this flower is going to have a yellow ochre. And I don't want a ton of water on my brush to control a little bit of where these little speckles are. So using the tip of my brush, I'm just going to add some speckly center in there. We can add more details once that dries to some of these petals and center, but right now let's just leave that one as is. I know totally doesn't look like, it might not look like a flower, but once we get these scanned in and designed, I promise you it will look like a really fun sticker design. I'm going to work in more of a mauve-y color. If you don't have a mauve paint tube or in your palette, this is really just a red with a little bit of purple. So I just want to now create more of a flatter, rounder petal flower, similar to what I have up here. So working with a little more water because I want lighter petals this time. I'll just start to paint some nice rounded petals, leaving the center again, and paint it so you have some jagged outer edges to these petals. Just makes them a little more loose style, not as realistic. And again, leaving some of the whites of the paper. I'll just pick up a little bit more of that mauve paint and just drop it in some areas to help define some of those petals. Even though it's the wet on wet technique right now, it's not going to really stay where you want it to stay per se. So something like that. And I always like to do the centers before the petals dry because I like the way that it blooms into the petals. So grabbing the yellow ochre, again, similar to what we did over there. We'll just do some little speckles here. I want to make sure I hit some of the paint where it's going to pull it out. So I'm experimenting. I might find that some of these flowers I don't really like in the end, so we don't have to use them all, but we want to have a good library of options before we go and scan them in. Let's do this golden yellowy dahlia style flower. So that'll be the yellow ochre. It'll be mixes of orange to get kind of that fun sunshiny golden color. And that's what we'll use right away in the beginning center of our whimsical flower. Again, just doing a few little marks like that. And it's going to kind of look like the flowers blooming up like that. All I'm doing is picking up water and dabbing my paper towel, and I'm just going to continue with whatever's left on my brush and painting these fun little half petal shapes like this and working my way out from that center, picking up more water. Because the way that light hits a flower, it is going to be lighter towards the outside petals. More light is able to cast on those bigger areas, so they have to be lighter. Then they appear in the center. So something like that. Again, we can hit the center with a little bit more of that yellow and orange combo. And especially once that dries, I'll add a little bit more detail. Again, do not stress if you worry that your flowers are just looking like a big, funny looking shape, because once they get scanned in and printed onto a product, they're going to look very, very pretty and fun. So here we have a few flowers. I'm gonna let those dry. I'll come back to adding more detail. I think I want to try at least just a couple more little flowers, ones that have stems that come off of them, so that way I'm able to maybe use them to create the shape of the heart. So let's do a rose, a sideways rose. I'll just take another little bit of this pink that I have. I love this pink. So this is going to be a little rosebud. So I'll start at the very top of the rosebud with the very pointed tip of my brush and just paint a few little pieces up top. And then I will use the thicker belly of my brush to do a few strokes coming down. Let's mop up some of that paint in some of those areas just so it shows that they are separate petals here. I'm naturally going to get lighter. So something like that. It's kind of hard to see while it's wet. You can pick up like a red or a darker version of your pink and drop that in, especially up top here and along the bottom. So this is going to have a stem to it. I'll transition over to a green. One of my favorites is sap green. So here I have just sap green straight from the tube because I'm not going for a super realistic color palette. And starting where it connects to the floral right there, just do something like that. I like the way that it blooms into the flower. It's kind of almost replicating how a rosebud is kind of cradled by the greenery underneath it. So let's just do something like that. Can add a little leaf. So again, have that same color paint. Going to press down thick and pick up thin. That's the beauty of this brush. And that's going to create a little leaf like that. So something like this is what I have. We can add some leaves to our other florals. So let's just grab our sap green again. or any type of green you have in your palette. Now being very careful not to bump our wet flower that I just painted here. Let's just add a few to the side. And now if I don't like these little greenery leaves that I'm painting, I'm just gonna even pick up a little bit of that color there. If I don't like it, I can take them away in Photoshop once I get them scanned in. Let's do another one. And I do that all the time when I'm creating wedding invitations and painting pieces. There's just sometimes like I'll paint the flowers or whatever I'm using to create like a crest, and I'll have some of those floral details like the leaves there, and I'm like, oh, that just does not work. So all I need to do is take the clone stamp, or not the clone stamp, the layer mask tool, and I can get rid of it for one of the flowers, and then I can leave it in some other flowers. It just gives a nice variation and less pressure, so you don't need to feel like you need to make them just perfect. I just took some darker green there and dropped it in. Let's see, let's add, just want to add another little leaf up here. That wasn't my most shapely leaf there. There we go. Maybe add a little darkness to that, right where it hits the petals of the flower. All right, let's do a few more leaves. This time I might mix the yellow ochre into my sap green, which creates just that really, that nice olivey color. I don't know if olive's the right descriptor of that, but it makes it a lighter green than the sap green. And let's do that to this flower here. So again, you can do the leaf style where you press thicker in the belly, middle of the leaf, and then pull your brush up and have less pressure, so you're just using the very point of your brush to create the end of your leaf. Another helpful tip is to grab now, let's just grab the sap green. It's going to look a little different sitting next to this leaf. Let's do one over here. And something like that. Can add a little bit of darkness over here. All right, so here we are so far with our whimsical florals. Let's do, I at least like to work with 3 leaves on a flower. I think it always helps to center it a little bit better, but you don't have to do that either. So let's add another one. Thinking of adding one over here. And then once we get these scanned in, we'll rotate, we'll multiply and copy and paste these flowers and rotate them. So we'll have a lot of different ways that we can flip them. So you don't need to paint a new flower for every little piece in your sticker. I think we should add a little bit of darkness to some of these areas. So I'll just grab some of that green and drop it in right there. Drop it in over here. I just love the way that the lighter green mixes with that darker green there. So for this flower, it is pointing, the center is pointing up, like it's blooming up towards this part of the paper. So let's just do a few leaves coming down off the bottom. Keeping this fairly simple within our color schemes of pinks, mauves, and yellows and greens. So nice gap here for a leaf. I'm gonna take my brush and scoop some of that up there. So mix up a little bit of a slightly different green with our yellow ochre. Let's go ahead and make another one kind of coming off right here. It doesn't have to be real big. Again, don't worry about messing up. If you don't like what you just did, you can remove it once you scan it. This is just a kind of a peek inside of my digitizing course, mini course that I'm creating. So if at the point of this recording, it's not out yet, it's coming out in just a couple of weeks. I'm so excited about it. It's called Digitizing Watercolor Secrets, and it's a comprehensive guide and a mini course that shares my exact method of how I digitize, and then it walks you through a project so you can learn how to transform your artwork onto products such as mugs, tea towels. I sell, a big part of what I do is wedding invitations, so you could even use them. For example, I paint each of these pieces on their own and scan them in to create this watercolor crest. So this course is going to give you all the tools and skills you need to do just that and start making money from your artwork. So I'll have a waitlist sign up down below here in the description once this video is posted. Otherwise, if you're watching this at a future date and it is out, it'll also be available to the course at the link below. All right. So there is another leaf here. Just add a little bit more green there. All right, so that's looking good. Feels a little funny right here. And when you take a step back, evaluate your flowers, you might need to add some leaves in areas that just look off and funny. So let's add, for me, in my instance, I'm gonna add another leaf here. I just have to figure out exactly how I want it to appear. Might bring it off the area just to help balance the flower. Okay. Leave that for now. Okay, let's see. I think we could use one more flower, and I'm pretty sure I want it to be more in the yellows. So this time, I'm gonna make sure I don't have any green on my brush. Since it's a big brush, it holds on to a lot of color. So really get that clean. Okay. This time I'm gonna start with the center of the flower. So I'll just pick up some yellow ochre and just going to paint the center with a few little dots. And then let's grab just the slightest amount of yellow. So mostly water, a little bit of paint. And we are going to create what looks like kind of like a little bit of a daisy. So I'll just define the petals, pulling some of that center color I just painted leaving a little white of the paper. Sometimes it helps to rotate your paper. Okay, so here's what I have for this little yellow daisy. I'm just gonna grab some of that same yellow ochre and pull it out a little bit more from the center and hit the outer edges of my petal. Something like that. That'll make a really nice filler flower. So if we have gaps in creating our heart design, this can help fill some of that area right here. Okay, so just going to add a few little details into these flowers now that they have dried. I don't want to go too heavy on the details because I want them to be loose. And a lot of the times the layering on it will be plenty for what you need to help define the flower. So I'll pick up the yellow ochre and mix with the orange. I'm going to start with this flower right here. And to do that, I'm just going to take that color and dab right over the center there. It's going to create a lot more interest already. And then I'll pick up a little bit of that pink paint. Don't need too much, but this is what will help define some of those petals. Just going to paint from the outside or the inside pulling out. I might even want to go and smooth that in. So if I get rid of all the paint on my brush, I can just push that paint around. So when I say detail, it's not much detail, it's just enough to define it a little bit more. For our little mauve flower here, I want to warm it up just slightly with a little bit of the pink. So I'll mix a little bit of that pink with the mauve color. Again, doing that same technique. Just add a few little lines coming from the center and out. And I might just leave it like that. Can always hit a little bit of brush or water to help smooth that part there. Okay, so this flower needs a darker center, so orange mixed with the yellow ochre is what I'm looking for. And we can even kind of show some of those little petal shapes like that. So I just painted a few little small triangles. And then with very little bit amount of paint on my brush, I'll just help define some of those petal outer edges. Getting rid of most of the paint on my brush. Just want to pull it out, pull out the current color I have on my paper. And you might have lost it like I did, so I'll just add a little bit more of a pinky orangey to my center here. Just enough to show the contrast. All right. So I will just grab a little bit of yellow to help define these petals, not that they have dried. Can even add some to the outer edges here. It's up to you and how detailed you want to get. I'm keeping mine light and whimsical. This little rosebud doesn't need much, but if I pick up the red and pink color, we can add a little bit of detail, just hit it with a few little marks up top there, and even bring a line down that'll show how that rosebud is forming. But I don't need much, so I think I'll just leave it like that. Okay. Again, we might find that we want another leaf. I'm kind of feeling something over here. I'll just grab more of that green on my palette. Just because all these other flowers have so much heaviness down below that I just want to offset it with one more leaf. And now that I see it, it's gonna need another leaf because it looks a little bit funny with just one hanging out. I usually don't like to work in sets of 4. Anything with an odd number always does better. So just add one more. Pick up some of that paint to show a little variety. Okay. I'm going to leave this daisy without a leaf for now. Like I mentioned, I think it'll make a really nice filler flower. And what we can do before we wrap this part of it up is just add a few little stems or leaves. And these will be pieces that we'll be able to add them either onto flowers or have them just floating on their own. So I'll just start with a really thin line here and then just create a little leaf shape like this. So that's one piece I'll have to work with. Let's just do a few more. Again, a thin line, then I'll press down thicker and pull up my brush thinner. And that's kind of a sideways leaf. I'll add a little color to the bottom. And let's do one that has a little more in the yellows. Do thin. And then I'm going to start at the very top on this one. And then bring it back down to my stem. Fill in the gap on the other side. So there we have a few options. This is also a great approach to creating patterns. So if you want to create a watercolor pattern, design all your pieces, paint all your pieces, and then when you scan them, you'll cut them out, and then you can play with them once you get on into Photoshop or Illustrator, however you're going to create your final product. And let's see. I don't love having to go back after painting. I kind of try to do everything or more in this session, so I don't have to go back. We could do a little vine. So I have a little bit of paint left on my brush. I'll just do a little bit of a vine. So let's say that's the top leaf. Here's another leaf here. The longer I can work with the paint that's currently on my brush will give variation in that color. So I'm just trying to paint them going in different directions. And then I'll add that stem. Let's go ahead and add that stem right now with a very light pressure, and then I'll connect some of those leaves that didn't make it onto the stem. Okay, so there's something I can also work with in our heart. It will be nice to have shapes that have a little more curvature to show some of those outer edges of the heart. And I think that looks pretty good. What I'm going to do next is the lettering. I personally like to sketch out my lettering. And you could do this, you could paint it a couple different times. So what I want it to say is spread love. And I don't exactly know if I want it to all be in a brush lettered cursive or have some that are just straight capital letters. I'm not sure yet. So I'm just going to do it a couple different ways. So let's first sketch it out. And then I'll just play with it. And you can make this as big. Oops. I'm going to run into a problem here. You can see with my flower. So I'll just do that. And then so something like that could be one. We could do an all capital. And then I could reuse this love, or we can just try another one. So you try things multiple times, and then once you get in to Photoshop, we'll decide which one we like. Now, of course, I got to go back through and lighten up my sketch, which for me was pretty dark. So I'll just quick run the eraser right over top. It's just going to make scanning and editing so much easier. There's obviously different erasers that would probably make this a lot easier, but for convenience, I'm just using the back of my pencil. So I want it light enough to be able to see it, or dark enough to see it, but light enough to not really show through the paint. Once watercolor goes over pencil, it will not erase, so no big deal. Once we get into Photoshop, you can use tools in there to clone out all those marks, but the less editing is kind of my goal. I do not feel good or comfortable using this big brush, so I'm going to move to a smaller one. So here's one that's just a little bit smaller. It's actually size 8. I could even go smaller than that. Let's try this 6. I just really want to make sure that there's a nice pointed tip to it. So pick your favorite color within your color scheme that you've been working in. I'm personally going to use oops, that's the mauve. I'm going to use a bright color. So I want to go back to my favorite color, which is this pink. And the trick here will be to make sure we get varying water to paint amounts on our brush as we work through these letters. So I'll start with this one. See, I got a little something on my brush. But anyway, so we want to start at the top of this S with light pressure. I'll come around, press thicker, and then I'm going to pick up my brush and come back around to finish that S. Don't worry about jagged edges. We'll clean that up as well. I'll just pick up some water, press down thick, and then come to the top of the P, press down thick, and then do that little swirl. And again, I want to show a nice varying value. So here I have a really dark S and a lighter P. Can always add more paint in if I want, but that's kind of the name of the game when it comes to doing brush lettering. So I'll just add a little darkness there, but I'll keep the rest of the P light. So we'll just continue that. If you need to, it is helpful. I find sometimes, since this is smaller words, it's no big deal. But if you're doing a lot of brush lettering, study up on some fonts. You can get some good ideas on where the thicks and thins are, how the font is based on, you know, the bottom, how the font and the letters hit, how fun and up and down they are, stuff like that. All right. Kind of bummed that I messed this up, but got a little too close to my flower. I think it'll work out just fine though. All right, so here I have spread. Take a peek, see if anything needs to be darker, thicker. I'm gonna make that piece darker. And then I'll just do the love in the same color. I'm working on 140-pound cold press paper, which I actually prefer to do brush lettering on. It could even be just like a flat computer paper because it's a little harder to pull that lettering on a jagged, rough paper like this. But for convenience, since I had space on this, I'm just going to do that. But you'll notice a difference if you do this on flatter, not as textured paper. Alrighty. So there's that variation. And I'm going to do the same color for my other lettering. That way I can just kind of mix and match if I don't like something from this combo. This one's going to be all fun capital letters here. So playful lettering. Pick up a little more paint. And if you need to, just paint these larger. The nice thing about the sticker is it's only a 3x3 inch sticker, so you don't need to worry about getting super detailed. The sticker is just going to print so small. And when you print artwork on a sticker, it's not as detailed, so you don't have to get quite so specific. And then I'll finish this one just to have another love option. Not sure I love this one as much, but we have it, so. And then I can go back through and fix some of these areas that are just too broken. Alrighty. I'm not doing a whole Valentine's Day collection, so this is kind of my fun little Valentine's taste this year for a sticker, and I think it would sell well all year round. All right, good to take a step back, see if there's anything else you want to add to your repertoire of graphics that we've created now. And then what we'll do next, and I'll show in part 2 of this series, is a video on how to scan, digitize, and put them into a flower heart shape for a sticker. And I can't wait to show you all of that in my next video. Could you, oh, I see a question here. Could you use hot press smooth watercolor paper would work great with lettering. You could use that honestly for your entire design. Do not get caught up on having super high quality cotton 140-pound cold press paper for things you're digitizing, especially stickers, because they are small and you do not need the quality of paper for that. So don't get caught up. I use student grade paper all the time for things that I digitize. The only thing that I don't do with digitizing, I always make sure to use a high quality paper when I do things that involve like a venue, because I give the venue painting then to my clients at the end as a gift, the original. So those things I do on high quality paper, but you could paint any of the smaller graphics. So like this, anything that you feel most comfortable painting on. You don't need to invest a ton in paper because it's going to be printed so small. You're welcome. Alrighty, you guys. So thank you so much for joining in today again. Digitizing Watercolor Secrets course and guide is coming out this month. Get on the wait list if you are interested in hearing more about the updates and when that goes live. Otherwise, I will leave a direct link to the course when it is live down below as well. And I will see you guys in the next video for part 2, and cannot wait to see your stickers, and have a wonderful rest of your day.